The first topic I'd like to address is about the drinking water in St. Martin. Yesterday there was a statement made by the inspectorate, and I think it's a quote, "Indeed, some hotels on the island have tested positive for Legionella, which can happen based on various causes. Those that were tested positive do have a program to follow to ensure that contamination is contained and prevented. And the inspectorate and the hotels are working very well together to ensure that the laws are adhered to and that public safety is protected." So, for clarity, at no time was there a public health risk. Otherwise, the inspectorate would then adopt a policy where they would inform the public whenever there is a public health risk. However, the hotels, based on some of the results that they were seeing, and seeing that the results were fairly widespread and not contained to a particular location on the island, some of the hotels began testing the water that they were receiving directly to the property and found some inconsistencies, let's say. That then triggered a discussion with the inspectorate whereby we initiated a quick snapshot of the water that's being distributed around St. Martin. And there were some points of concern. Again, I want to be sure that we don't create any hysteria. At no point is there any public health risk. Otherwise, again, the public would be informed. And I think it's also important to mention that we're still very much in the process of investigation and understanding what exactly is happening, and we're in dialogue with GB. We need to initiate a dialogue with the water producer as well. So it's a little bit premature, but given the fact that the topic is out for discussion, I think it's important to clarify what we're working on. So there were some snapshot tests done. Normally the tests involve more of the distribution tank, but we felt that it was important to see what was happening within the distribution system as well. And again, I want to stress, no public health risks at this time, but there are parameters that are specified within the law, and we find that some of those parameters are not being adhered to. In particular, one of the points of concern is about the level of chlorine in the water. By law, there's a certain minimum level as well as a higher level of chlorine that by law is supposed to be within the drinking water. For those that you don't know, the chlorine is a sanitizer. The chlorine is what is added to the water to ensure that we don't get bacterial growth within the water and to make sure that the drinking water is safe for drinking, for consumption. So in addition, another thing that we found is that the pH level was fairly high. The pH level, although it's not a public health parameter, one of the consequences of a high level of pH is that it will consume more chlorine. So it would make the maintaining proper levels of chlorine in the water an issue. So we've met with GB. We've expressed the findings of the snapshot evaluation of the distribution system, informed them that there are some concerns, and in addition to that, have issued to them a number of, based on our meeting, there were a number of agreements that were made, in particular with regards to the testing of the water, in regards to the frequency of the sampling, and also to clearly state that they must adhere to the guidelines, the parameters for the quality of water within our distribution system. And in a follow-up, now that we've looked at the end users, some of the end users, looked at the distribution system, we will also now follow up with discussions with the water producers as well. A quick note as well on the progress regarding the hospital financing. Again, I noticed there's some discussions. As you know, there's a couple of parties that are interested, in particular APS and SZV, and they have a process, a due diligence process. That process takes time, and that's a process that we don't interfere with. And mention was made about why previously we were always talking about the court case with VAMED. I think that some of the negative publicity from St. Martin regarding the fact that the hospital project was on hold and that, in essence, our healthcare system was being held hostage by a court case, was also That public relations campaign is exactly what I believe drove VAMED to the negotiating table, because as a large multinational company, I don't believe they enjoyed the negative publicity about a small Caribbean island being held hostage in a court case system. So that's one of the reasons that the press conferences were frequent and redundant to that point. And I think that now, while the progress on the hospital is proceeding well, that the design phase is continuing. As a matter of fact, I believe it was last week, the number of representatives from the hospital and the design team met to go over the drawings. So the discussions are going on about fine-tuning the drawings. And I think it's important that you look at, when we want to make sure that we build a hospital for an affordable price, the best way to do it is to make sure that the design is correct. As those can see, Curaçao is a great example. Every time you have change orders, every time you have a change in design, it always adds time to the project and cost to the project. So our goal is to make sure that we have a hospital that, once it's on paper, sees very little changes, because that's the best way to do it efficiently and effectively. And while the financiers are working on their evaluations, I don't think any media press will help them to expedite that process. But we are hoping that by the end of July, hopefully beginning of August at the latest, we have a final conclusion to our financing for the hospital and can move forward.
2017 Atlantic hurricane season storm names: Arlene, Brett, Cindy, Dawn, Emily, Franklin, Keth, Harvey, Irma, Jose, Katia, Lee, Maria, Nate, Ophelia, Felipe, Rena, Sean, Tammy, Vince, Whitney. The season officially begins on June 1st and will end on November 30th. Be prepared. Remember, it only takes one to make it a bad hurricane season.
What about the division of assets of the Netherlands Antilles? Well, I'm pleased to report to you that I went to Curaçao last week, I returned on Friday, and I came back with a receipt evidencing that 59 million guilders have been deposited on the bank account of St. Martin. So finally, the 59 million guilders that was owed to St. Martin for its share of the assets of Netherlands Antilles is in the bank. I think that a lot of people were pessimistic or skeptic that it would take us many years to receive this money, but I'm pleased to report that it's in the bank. As you know, the government of St. Martin is in the process of reforming our tax system, and the aim is to simplify our tax system and to shift as much as possible from direct taxes more to indirect taxes, and to stabilize government's revenues at a level that will allow government to meet its obligations to the public at large. Right now, revenues are at a level that it's insufficient to meet all of the obligations that government have and maintain a balanced budget. Reforming our entire tax system is complicated, and it's quite a challenge. The reforming project is being tackled in segments, and I'm pleased to report that yesterday in the Council of Ministers, legislation has been approved to start cleaning up the clutter in our tax system. Laws that are hardly used anymore, and laws that no longer serves the best interests of the people of St. Martin. And by cleaning up the clutter, new legislation will not be impaired by the existence of clutter. And the clutter is basically tax laws that existed before St. Martin became a country. And in the process of reform, we're trying to get rid of those laws so that they don't conflict with new legislation that is coming. The laws that we are cleaning up, and which was the subject of the decision by the Council of Ministers yesterday, was a repeal of the succession law. This law, if you will recall, from the 22nd of March in 2012, Parliament had already indicated its interest in repealing this law. Now, the concrete step has been taken to take this off the books. We've also, and this has also been an expression from Parliament, that they would also like to see property tax laws that are on the books but have never been implemented for many years. Whilst they are in force in Curacao and Aruba, they have property tax, we don't. We have the laws, but they were never implemented. Well, that is cluttering too. So part of that decision and approval of yesterday was to put in process, in the pipeline, a decision to repeal property taxes for St. Martin, as well as a repeal of the surcharge that goes with the law on property taxes. Another tax that we're cleaning up is a dividend tax, which also has not been producing anything. So that's also being taken off the books. When I say that, the government have decided to take it off the books, but it still has to go through the pipeline, the council advice, and then back to Parliament for Parliament to make a final decision. We're also going to repeal the law on economic zones. The law on economic zones have been on the books for many years, and it requires that an area be designated to be an economic zone. That has never happened, and there's no thoughts now to make that happen, and it no longer fits the time we're in. A repeal of the hotel and industry tax facility. The experts have determined that the law in the book granting tax facilities to hotels, that in almost all cases, the hotels come first, they establish themselves, and they establish it based on, well, can I make this a success? Can I generate enough income to cover my expenses and make a fair return on investment? And based on that, they make the decision to put the hotel. It is always after, several years after, somebody whisper in the ear, by the way, you can get a hotel tax facility. And then they file. And the procedure is very complicated and very encumbering. Well, proposal is take it off the books. Those tax facilities will no longer be offered. As well as tax facilities for development of land. I don't think anybody needs a tax facility to develop land. So these laws are all, and according to the experts that we have used, and this goes back to 2015, they all recommend that we strike all of these laws off the books, and those are the steps we're taking right now with the decision from Council of Ministers yesterday. Finally, I'd like to mention that you've been hearing for quite some time that the government has been having IT problems. they're vexing problems. They're vexing problems because our IT system has not been updated for many, many, many years. And of course, the struggle government has had to make ends meet, balanced budget, that there never was enough funds available to get a proper IT system, which we're going to fix. We're also with a project busy, and we've also gotten a wink that maybe the CFT would approve a substantial loan based on the fact that we've already produced two balanced budget to revamp the entire tax infrastructure that we have, including inspection, including receiver's office. In fact, to bring them both together under the same roof in a building. And we're talking about somewhat about 40 million guilders in order to make sure we have a proper IT system, make sure that we have an efficient environment, because that is what has been hampering compliance for many years. But in the process, given the situation we're in, we had a major setback. The major setback is that information in order for you to make your financial statements have not been recorded and registered because systems have been down for quite some time. And in fact, we have a backlog in the finance department of 4 months that we have to catch up on. It's a vexing problem because we have deadlines to meet. Deadlines for the budget, deadlines for your annual statements, and they could be in jeopardy. So I just wanted to share that now, just in case in future I'm asking, how come you missed a deadline? That is directly related to the IT problems that we've experienced.
2017 Atlantic hurricane season storm names: Arlene, Brett, Cindy, Dawn, Emily, Franklin, Health, Harvey, Irma, Jose, Katia, Lee, Maria, Nate, Ophelia, Felipe, Rena, Sean, Tammy, Vince, Whitney. The season officially begins on June 1st and will end on November 30th. Be prepared. Remember, it only takes one to make it a bad hurricane season.
First, I'd like to start by giving a big word of congratulations to Mr. Kyle John and the police force of St. Martin for the tremendous job that they did during and after the robbery or attempted robbery at the Scotia Bank. This goes to show that with the cooperation, the alertness, because there were different agencies involved, the security guards played a role, there were off-duty officers, there were officers from different agencies. They all got together and, stood up to the call of duty, and as such, we were able to detain all 4 culprits in this crime. We will not be able, and there is no one who would believe, I don't think there's one place in the world where you don't have crime. But it has been clear from the get-go that we would do everything possible to make sure that our law enforcement officers have what it takes, have what they need to be able to do the job that they are assigned to do. So once again, Mr. John and team, congratulations. This afternoon, I will be having a meeting with the unions based on some information that I read in the newspaper. I will not go too much in details now because, as like I said, I'll be meeting with them. But there's one thing I need to clarify. From the very beginning, one of the first things that I did was to invite the unions for a meeting. And I've had several meetings with them since since then. And everything that I've done, including the recruitment of the police, the unions are represented on the recruitment committee. Okay, so I just need to say that. The rest I will discuss with the unions this afternoon, and hopefully we would leave the meeting having clarified whatever the issues are. As I said before, I'm always open to have discussions with the union. As a matter of fact, I come from the union thing myself. I'm a former trade unionist, so I understand the struggles. But we have to deal with all matters within our reality and within our possibility. You know, there are a lot of things we can want and we would want today, but not everything is possible. And I do acknowledge, I just commended the police for the work that they are doing. It is some of these same police officers who are encountering the problems. And despite that, they are out there doing their job. I think so they should be double commended for that. And I definitely will be one who would not be doing anything to jeopardize them or their livelihood. On the contrary, I'm doing everything possible to fix the problems that I inherited. One other issue I'd like to clarify, because it's the issue of the insurance for the justice workers. In the releases, and I even think in our answer, we erroneously mentioned medical insurance. It's not the medical insurance. It is the life and accidental, etc., that type of insurance that we are talking about. And this has been finalized for a long time. The workers did not get the, how I would say it, not the policy, but the proof of insured, because at the time, the document, that document that we got from the insurance company, we felt somehow it was not up to par with it. For instance, there was really no indication that it was an official document from the insurance company, and we felt that it was prone to forgery, to duplication easily. So we asked the insurance company to change the type of document that was used to give off the proof. So that was the delay. We had them, we did not give them off for that reason. And in the meantime, we have received the updated version for all of the workers that are involved. And if I'm not mistaken, some were already distributed. The Secretary General is in charge of making sure that everyone, all the departments get that. So that is not something that is pending or that they were not insured, etc. That was the reason why. I mentioned last week, I think, that a team or task force was set up to look at all of the personnel issues within the Justice Ministry, and there are many. I mean, sometimes I'm afraid to use the newspaper to see which court case I lost this week. The problems are many, and many of them are justified. People have been waiting for years in order to get their business regulated, and it was not happening. So I could imagine that people get very frustrated, and some would get sick of waiting, and they would turn to the judge to get a decision. As a matter of fact, there's one group of workers who did just that, went to the judge, got a verdict a year ago, and still did not get their things regulated. These things we are working on, and to make sure that everything is done. There are so many of these personnel issues, and they spread among all of the departments. So what we realized was that if we start working on, for instance, the problems that are facing the police department, we would be leaving back or putting on a second burner, for instance, the Lands Recherche or the customs or whoever, the Voertuigraad. They all have these type of issues. So all of the problems were selected and grouped in teams, problems that are disciplinary issue, problems that are for other issues, those that are legal, that before the courts right now. And a team of workers, HR workers, were selected, and they're charged with just doing that. So we would not, for instance, be looking at the court cases related to the police department. We'll be looking at all court cases throughout the ministry. So the priority is not the department, the priority is set by the team, and because we have 5 different officials on the team, none would have to wait until the other one is finished. So while one is dealing with the court cases, the other one is dealing with the disciplinary actions, et cetera, et cetera. And that way, we hope that within a relatively short period, we would be able to deal with all of the personnel issues that are facing the ministry. On a good news item, at a prison, next week, I believe Monday the 19th in the afternoon, we will be doing the groundbreaking for the renovation, the fixing of the entrance of the prison. The prison project was divided in different phases. This was one of the phases that was approved, but not executed because some other things had to be put in place before we could go up there and do this necessary work. The prison has been very stable. Also a word of congratulations to Mr. Carter and Mr. Williams for a tremendous job that they're doing, and the task force that is backing them in doing this task. Things are of a nature now, and the necessary precautions have been taken, so where construction can actually take place, after all, it is the entrance. So we had to make sure that we take measures to guarantee the security up there while this project would be taking place. But next week, Monday, we hope to start with this project, and from there continue with the upgrading and renovation of the project. Hopefully, until I can announce, of the prison, until I can announce that we are ready to start with the new one, because that's the ultimate goal. I believe there was another article in the newspaper about, if I'm not mistaken, it's Phoenix Global Technologies, claiming that the ministry owed them, I believe, some 200,000 guilders, and I think this was a company that had to do with ankle bracelets sometime in the past. We are looking into that matter, and as soon as I have more information on that, I would share it with you. Thank you.